Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Doctor and Duo podcast, a podcast hosted by two medical students from the formerly average pre-meds to the average pre-meds, where we give you our unfiltered experiences with medical school as well as our advice. We don't receive pay or subsidy from anybody to tell us what to say. So, as always, my name's Eleni, and I am an MS2 at Penn State College of Medicine. And as a reminder, I speak only for myself and not for my institution.
Yeah, so hey everyone, I'm Noah. I'm a second year at Mayo Clinic Alex School of Medicine. Like Eleni, I only speak for myself and not Mayo Clinic.
All right. Since we're in the season of Thanksgiving, Noah and I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're thankful for and in terms of medical school. You know what I was thinking about was how thankful I am that medical school is so dissimilar to undergrad.
Yeah, no, I think med school is different in a lot of good ways, good and bad ways. One of the major ways, and we've talked about it a little bit on the podcast, but before is like just the sheer volume of information. But at least one big change for me is undergrad was a lot bigger. In med school, we have a much smaller class, so it's nice that I actually get to know everyone on that level. So I think that's been one of the major changes for me is actually knowing everybody who I'm in class with.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, my med school class is about the same size as our high school graduating class, right? Because how many
Yeah.
were in our high school graduating class?
Yeah, but actually, yeah, about 100, 120 or something like that.
It was like 135 or something like that.
Um,
Let me look this up. I'm curious. Um, oh my gosh, we graduated in 2018. Isn't that
I
crazy?
know that's wild. 5 years ago.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, I have about 130 in my class right now, in medical school, which I think is about on par with how many we had in high school. So it's a bigger med school class though, and that's like the thing, which is I went from UVA, right, which is gosh, 4,000 kids, 3,000 kids in one graduating year to 130 in my high school class. It feels, or excuse me, in my med school class, it feels just like high school again. Like you really, really, really get to know your classmates in some great ways and some not so good ways.
Can Med school in a lot of ways can feel a lot more like high school than undergrad in terms of the social dynamics. Not that my class has a bunch of drama, but I just think in the way that you have friend groups again, that sort of isolate from each other in different ways that can be interesting. You certainly have your people who you know best and your people who you're sort of more acquaintances with. But at the end of the day, um, I know something about everybody, um, which, I think is really unique. And I have a smaller class than you with 55, so we're actually pretty uniquely close. We have clinical groups that we go through that we've gone through the entire year and a half with. So those people really well, both as friends and then as future colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I guess I'm grateful for is that like I really found my friend group a lot more quickly in medical school than I did in undergrad. And I think just because of size, so it's kind of like you gravitate towards people you're similar to, and others who you're not, you keep as acquaintances. Whereas in college, you're constantly sifting through people, clubs, activities, service fairs, that type of thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the other differences that I think I'm grateful for in terms of medical school is that I was surprised by was the actual relative amount of free time that you have, and not necessarily free time to be goofing off, but free times in terms of how to structure my day as for studying. So back in undergrad, I might have 3 or 4 classes a day at various times of the day, and then those dreaded chemistry and biology labs that go on for hours. In medical school, at least for me, it was pretty much you have things in the morning, maybe from 8 to 11 or 8 to noon. And then depending on what stage you are in the curriculum, you might have various clinical activities in the afternoons. Then you have certain days that are free. And for me, that allowed me to have a lot more structure and how I wanted to organize my days, how I could do my studying, where can I do things for self-care. That don't get me wrong, I had a lot of that time in college too, but I think it's just different in a good way.
Absolutely. Um, speaking of different in a good way, kind of, and building off of what you're saying is like, yes, there's volume, but there's also more time. Um, and I know you kind of talked about that a little bit, but I mean, I've been going home a lot more. I know you went home a lot in undergrad, but for me personally, I'm going home a lot more um, in medical school than I was ever in undergrad. And I think, it's because I just I have the time now to come home and be with family. And it's nice because I can manage my own time. I'm not constantly stuck at campus over the weekends. Like, yes, I do service events and that type of thing, but they're far and fewer in between because I think everyone knows that we're med students and we're busy. And I think that that really kind of adds to the experience. I've been closer to my family personally than I ever was in undergrad.
Yeah, I would agree. So for me, it kind of looks different for us because what was interesting is that you're a little bit farther away for undergrad at UVA than from the Hampton Roads area. And for me, I'm literally thousands of miles away in Rochester, Minnesota versus Suffolk, Virginia. Now you're closer in med school. But for me, um, I can certainly call my parents every day. I have a fiance. I have time to talk to her and make sure that our relationship is going well. And I think that in undergrad, like the constant stress of grades that's onto it. So another thing med school for both of us is pass fail. So that takes a lot of the stress out of it and allows you to build that time for family, significant others, self-care. And that has been a really nice change. Instead of worrying about I need a 93 in organic chemistry, you can kind of be like, well, this goes in the 30% bucket that I'm not going to worry about.
Yep, the F-it bucket.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I'm not going to say the name. Um, but yeah, another thing that I'm really grateful for too, and something we don't really talk about is kind of like the age variance in our class. Um, like my friend group, I'm the youngest of my friend group. The second youngest is like 24 or 25, so we're separated by a couple years, and the oldest person in our friend group is 38. And like getting to, see her life experience and really, you know, understanding just kind of the world through different people's eyes and different experiences because no you and I we both came through straight through from undergrad, and so we've been kind of perma students, and it's been really nice. Like I've talked to folks that have worked in the industry for 10 years, who've worked as teachers, who have worked in completely different professions, finance, consulting, and brought their experiences to med school, and I really really enjoy that diversity in our class.
Yeah, that's something that's really nice, but in terms of life experience. And then I think one thing that's really unique, and every med school will have this diversity, but I think some other forms of diversity too, like religious diversity. I know for a lot of times we have Muslims in our class, we have Jews, Christians, all the various faiths in between. And that's been a really cool experience to be able to talk to people about that part of their lives. And then, like you said, sort of like the different life experiences. And what's cool is then as a second year, you meet first years who have lived more than you. There's a guy in my class who's been a mental health counselor for a really long time before coming to med school. You have people who've been nurses who can be just as good clinically as you are a second year in their first year. So that's been just really interesting and unique. And you just got to remember that just like your patients, people come from different vantage points than you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And the clinical experience point has been very interesting because there's been people that were like PAs. Like I think someone in our class was like an ICU PA before coming to med school. And I'm like, and he knows everything, right? And I'm like, oh man, I got some catching up to do. So I really appreciated that diversity. And like I have a friend who's Muslim who, was willing to share her faith with me and took me to a mosque to learn about prayer service. It was so beautiful learning about that. And that was not really experience I had in undergrad. Um, I have a friend who's from New Mexico. I've never met anybody from New Mexico. Sorry to anybody from New Mexico who's listening to this. I've heard it's a wonderful place. But yeah, that diversity is just absolutely amazing. Truly. All right, Noah. I've said a couple things I've been thankful for. What are some things that you're thankful for?
Hmm. Let me see. I think one of the biggest things, and I had this in undergrad, but in medical school, it's really, I think, blossomed quite nicely is, and one thing that I've really truly come to value is the value of mentorship, and both physicians and in terms of, supportive family members too. My parents have always been supportive of my journey, my greater extended family. And then in medical school, I've met some wonderful physicians and other healthcare staff who've led me along my journey. Dr. Kung has been an amazing research mentor for me. I've had physicians who created unique clinical experiences just for me. I send an email and they're like, I'll do this for you. You don't worry about it. Um, and just make sure when you go to a school that you know that your faculty have the students' backs. And I think that's truly invaluable. And to have those people you can go to and you're like, hey, I think I really like this specialty. I'm not quite sure what I want my life to look like yet. And to have those career discussions, those are just as important as your clinical rotations third year, to have those one-on-one talks with people and have those crises of faith regarding your specialty or work-life balance and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, speaking of mentors, I've just been thinking kind of about the mentors that I've met. And one thing I noticed, and I don't know, because I know William and Mary is a little smaller than UVA, but I remember when I was at UVA, just the amount of attendings that I emailed to get, or like PIs that I emailed to get research. Like I would be emailing. I remember my first year at UVA when I was trying to get research, I emailed 26 professors. I got responses from three, two of which were no, and one of which was a maybe. And that maybe luckily did end up turning into a lab experience that was really wonderful for me and my development. But I don't know, at Penn State, it's been so like I feel like research kind of falling off trees. I mean, obviously it's not gonna like come and hit you in the face. Sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. And you got to reach out to attendings, but attendings are so willing to bring you on. They're so willing to accommodate to your schedule. They're so willing to kind of, help you out and mentor you. And I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's been one of the major differences. So I didn't email as many professors as you during during undergrad, but yeah, sort of along that same line of still multiple emails. Some I never heard back from. Some would say maybe, and eventually yes. Um, but in med school, I found it's really not a matter of if, it's more of when. Like, when can I meet you? When can I bring you along and help you out? And that's just medicine is so hierarchical, and to have people reach down and to know what it's like to be a medical student and be willing to put themselves in your shoes again is just really nice.
Yep. You know, I one thing, speaking of being in your shoes, one thing that really frustrated me when I was an undergrad was that professors always felt like they didn't remember what it was like to be a student, right? And it would be like, oh man, why are they giving us like these super hard exams? Or like, why are they demanding us study like 10 hours a day for this class when I have like six other classes? Do they not remember what it was like to be a student? And I just remember, I emailed one of the cardiologists that was directing our cardiology course, and the man responded in 6 minutes to my email. Like, I mean, the man's a cardiologist, and he still took the time to respond. And there's always going to be those professors that are not so cool, right? As in any institution, I'm sure Noah you had those well at Mayo. But I think the vast majority are really, really geared towards your success and really understanding. Like, I hate keep going back to the PIs, but like I have told PIs like I'm gonna be off the grid for like a month because I need to study. Like I told my PI I'm doing a neuromuscular gene panel study, and she's a fellow, for neurology fellow right now. And I was like, hey, like I so cannot like manage this right now. I need to go study for my neuroanatomy exam. She's like, no problem, and she was willing to let me stall entering data for like a month, and like that is just something you don't get in undergrad.
Yeah, yeah, same here. I've had people be like, listen, anatomy is like the hardest course. I need my 7 weeks to get through this, and then I promise I can turn my attention. And everybody's like, yeah, I know what it's like being a first year medical student. You like take your time. Um, and yeah, so I think one of the things that Lenny and I have just really echoed is that the physicians at almost any of these medical schools are going to go, in our experiences, go above and beyond for you. But yeah, let me see. Let me try and think, since you've given a couple. So I gave one of mentorship. Another thing that I've been thankful for. I think one of the other things that I've been thankful for, and this is sort of cliche, but is just the sheer variety and early depth of clinical exposure that we get. I've had the opportunity to meet so many amazing patients already. Literally, we had a GI physical exam session, and like the physician was going over to scratch test. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. Like, why? Like, thank you for this. And I think that's just to have this light bulb moments like that. Um, during your moments of clinical training, I think is always really cool. And one thing for me is seeing, and Eleni, I'm sure you've had the same feeling of seeing yourself as a second year, being like, wow, I couldn't do a head to toe physical my first day when I walked in here. And now I feel pretty confident working my way through it. Even if I don't know the diagnosis at the end, I can at least do a physical exam and I can take a history and I can have some idea of what's going on. And that's only going to get better as we go forward. That's been really kind of cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my attendings, so we have specific attendings that teach us clinical skills, and they would like she would affirm me, excuse me, you know, saying you're gonna like you'll get there, you will figure it out, like you'll get there. And I was like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. Like I would go in a room and I had no idea what to do. And I realized kind of as we did like formative exams and that type of thing, you know, going into our OSCEs for the end of the year, I really, I really have like I really can do a majority of head to toe exam. Are there some things like, Ober's test, Jurgensen, speeds, right? The MSK exam is really rough for
Yeah,
me.
the MSK exams are hard. Yeah.
But are there things I'm gonna forget? Yes, but like overall, I can build a solid differential without having to look things up and with the knowledge that I gained. And it's such an amazing feeling, watching myself grow from even just a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and the other thing that's also been really neat is seeing other classmates. And don't get me wrong, all of us we've been there, but I think what's really cool is you see somebody, and we've all been nervous, and I'm sure people have had the same thoughts about me. You see somebody nervous, like timidly touching the patient, and now they're confident they can go through a whole physical exam, and to see us grow as a class has also been neat. And for the people and I don't know how it was for you, but for the people that we had in our core focus group of we call it frames, that was our clinical experience in the afternoons. We got really close, and we know how we think, we know how we do our physical exams. um and I think that's always just so cool to literally go through every moment of your clinical training together, and you've grown as diagnosticians, and you know and being able to put together a differential and work together as a team in clinic.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I've been really thankful for too is like the teamwork aspects. I think that is something that like it really takes a fine skill to develop, and in medical school they really make you develop it. And the best part about it is, vast majority of people on my teams have been just so wonderful to work with. So prepared coming to class. Like in undergrad, there was always like a couple, three people on any group project, right, that were always incredibly uncooperative, incredibly unprepared, and incredibly unwilling to, respond. Right. And that's the guy that's like, we have an abstract due tomorrow, and they text 10 p.m. the night before.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one thing that in med school, like people are so prepared. And it's really nice to work on teams with people who really do care and everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, that's been another one of my experiences for small groups, whether we're putting a case together, a PowerPoint presentation, we're doing a talk, in clinic when we're presenting on rounds. It's nice to have people who are attentive, who once you give your HPI, or you can talk to a classroom and be like, hey, I'm going to go over this presentation with you. And I'll be like, oh, don't forget, you forgot to say the vitals before you started going into the physical exam portion um of your presentation. And to have everybody, I feel like I was scared coming into medical school because I read on Reddit about like gunners and things like that, but truly nobody's like sabotaged me, and I don't think anybody's sabotaged Eleni, but um you know no, everybody here has been supportive of each other's goals and dreams, and um trying to heighten our skills as future physicians. And it's just been, like Eleni said, nice to work with dedicated individuals who take it seriously, who want the best for the patient, and that's been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to build off of what you were talking about with like gunners and whatever. I honestly, it's been a breath of fresh air, and I think in part because I think you guys are also true pass fail no internal ranking, right? Yeah, so our schools are both true pass fail, no internal ranking schools, and like having that has been so indispensable in like my medical school experience. Like people are so collaborative, they share study guides, like I make Anki decks for anatomy for the whole class. Like we're willing to turn around and help the first year class, like, and people are really intent on helping each other. And I think that's different, not that UVA was full of gunners, but undergrad, what it was that everything was all about chasing the grade, right? And inevitably 91's an amazing grade, but like an A minus is a 3.7 versus a 4.0, right? And so it's like there's always that element of constantly feeling like you have to outdo everyone else, especially if it was a curve. And then there was always the people that was like, oh my God, I got a 93, and they're crying in the front row or whatever. Um, and I had people who would like ask me for notes constantly because, they didn't want to take their own, just a lot of kind of like things that probably were not very conducive to a healthy learning environment going on. And I just think that being in med school has just completely changed that narrative.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, let me see. I think the last thing, well, we kind of talked about friends, but I just kind of want to reiterate because I think it's important to build a social circle no matter where you go, and it doesn't have to be in medicine. Um, But that being said, I am grateful for my friend groups that are both in medicine and out of medicine. So for me, my space that I really like is jujitsu. All those guys over there have been fantastic. It's a way to release stress. I get to bond with everybody there. Then with people in medicine, I can go and talk about classes. We can vent about our professors, what they said, um, and how they should have done things better, or why this class sucked and why this one didn't. But I think it's important that you find your community, you find your people, and then eventually, for your specialty, a lot of it is finding your people. Um, and I've been grateful to all my close friends who have been there when it's a tough night, or you're freaking out about this MSK exam and you're like, I don't know what speeds test does. Like, please help. And people help. Um, so that's been nice. And it's also nice, like I said before, that to have people who are outside of medicine who have no idea what you're talking about, and that you can just talk about other things or do other things and have that space. Because medicine can be all consuming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that kind of brings, I think, to kind of the end, because we've been talking for, close to half an hour now at you guys. But, I think the biggest thing I'm grateful for is the support system that I've built in med school. The people that I've met, the people I study with, the people at home that are cheering you on, right? I think that really matters. And I think that's even more important in med school than it is in undergrad. It's important in undergrad, but it's especially important in med school because this is a long, hard journey. And I think from the outside, people looking in, the public don't really understand,
Yeah.
the trials and tribulations. I think they kind of expect the final product, which is after residency. And that's by no fault of theirs, right? But people don't really see the journey, they just see the end. And so it's really important to have people in your corner that see that journey and help see you through it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to that people understand, like for the people who are closest to you, what this journey truly entails. And nobody really knows until you get there. Because I know, Eleni, your parents weren't in medicine, mine were, but so for me, like Christiana was completely outside of medicine. And I'm like, I told her, hey, I'm gonna be busy. And then she's like, yeah, I know you'll be busy. It'll be like college. And I'm like, no, it's a different level of busy. And
Yeah.
then they don't get it until you're there and you're up at 10 o'clock, like still studying the Krebs cycle or the specific coagulation cascade. And then eventually in third year, when you're in the hospital and you don't come home because you're on surgery.
Yep.
So it's just different. Like people don't understand the training pathway. So to have people there who are and have the patient of a saint, because it truly does, to deal with a medical student in a friendship or a relationship is a hard thing. And I'm just so grateful for the people who are there who understand my journey, give me my space, and let me do my thing. truly invaluable.
And you know, Noah, I think we're as bad as I am as texting, I think we're part of each other's support systems as well, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that like I know that you understand. Like I can text you and be like, "Oh man, step one sucks." And you'll be like, "Yeah, I'm right there with you," because I can call, you know, my parents, whatever, as much as I want, who are outside of medicine. But the reality of the situation, they're like, "Oh man, that sounds hard." But you really know what it means to have it suck, right? And your med school friends and my med school friends, it's like, "Oh man, that test was super hard." So I think it's important have people both in your med school corner from med school who are outside of it too, because they keep you sane.
They do. They really do. So, it's been a great episode. It's Thanksgiving week. Everybody's excited for Thanksgiving and lots of food, except for me because I'm a child and still have a limited palate, but that's okay.
Have we talked about that on the podcast before?
No, and we shouldn't. We'll talk about it another time.
Okay, we'll expose you like later.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll expose me later. But
Okay.
but you know, I think things to keep in perspective, know your goals, know your friends, know your family, know your resources. Um, keep in perspective of the things that you're grateful for as you continue along this hard journey and for pre-meds as you try and get to this hard journey because it's only just starting. And so those would be my final words is just keep in mind all the things that keep you grounded as you go through this incredibly hard process.
Yep. I think that's a great conclusion. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We're so thankful for you all as well for listening to us, all 25 of our subscribers on YouTube. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you in the next episode. We'll probably have an episode in December where we kind of talk about the conclusion of the sorry, I
Yeah,
lost my train of thought.
yeah,
Conclusion of preclinicals.
yeah. Conclusion of this
Um,
cycle.
and we'll skip January because we'll both be studying for step one. And then maybe February, probably won't talk about step one until we both get our results, but that will probably be a March episode. So March episode will be step one. February, we'll figure out something else. So stay tuned and thanks so much. Take care, guys.
See everyone.